We have been going through the book of Matthew, looking at Jesus and his interactions with his disciples. What was he teaching to them? What correction was he bringing? What was the lessons that he was giving to them? And then asking the question, how do these things translate to us today as his modern day disciples? How do they apply to our life? And today's one is very sobering. It's very difficult to process in a way. And so bear with me as I read through this and get my thoughts out on video and stuff. We're in Matthew chapter 26 still. I'm reading once again from the CSB. And we are looking at verse 17 to 25. It says, on the first day of unleavened bread, the disciples came to Jesus and asked, "Where do you want us to make preparations for you to eat the Passover?" "Go into the city to a certain man," he said, "and tell him, the teacher says, my time is near. I am celebrating the Passover at your place with my disciples." So the disciples did as Jesus had directed them and prepared the Passover. When evening came, he was reclining at the table with the 12 while they were eating. And he said, "Truly I say to you, one of you will betray me." Deeply distressed, each one began saying to him, "Surely not I, Lord." He replied, "The one who dipped his hand with me in the bowl, he will betray me. The Son of Man will go just as it is written about him. But woe to that man by whom the Son of Man is betrayed. It would have been better for him if he had not been born." Judas, his betrayer, replied, "Surely not I, Rabbi." "You have said so," he told him. Or "you have said it," he told him. At this point, what we didn't read because it's not an interaction with Jesus, but right before this, right after Jesus is anointed by the woman with the alabaster perfume there, Judas goes to the high priests and he says, "If I identify Jesus for you, if I basically help you arrest him, what will you give to me?" And they give him a certain amount of money, and he takes that with the intention of betraying Jesus. Now, we've already established through the reading of Matthew and just through the Bible, really, Jesus' foreknowledge. He said multiple times the things that are going to happen, and then they happen. He said multiple times that the Son of Man himself will be handed over to the priest, and that he will be crucified, and that he will die, and he's going to go on to give even more predictions. I mean, he's predicting right here about Judas, about what's about to take place. There's other parts in Matthew and the other Gospels where Jesus is aware of what the people around him are thinking, and he interacts with that. He's going to tell Peter that Peter's going to deny him 3 times before the rooster crows, and he does. And so Jesus has this foreknowledge. And so he's there and they're having this meal. It's a very intimate setting. There's the table there. They most likely were on the ground, and there's all these pillows around, and they would have been reclined with one another. And they're eating this meal together, the Passover meal. Very important meal that they would be taking part in here. And Jesus makes this statement, which probably would have set a mood throughout the room. He says, "One of you is going to betray me." And what's interesting is the disciples' response. They're upset by this, obviously. And each one of them, it goes down the line, and they all say the same question, except Judas. They all say the same question. "Surely it's not I, Lord." Is that the wording that we see here? "Surely not I, Lord." And he responds to them one-on-one. But they're asking that. They're concerned, and rightfully so. This is huge. This betrayal that will take place, that has taken place, is said to be the biggest betrayal in all of history, in human history, in history. And Jesus had the foreknowledge that it was going to take place. And so think about this with me for a moment, if you will. Jesus, sitting at this table, knows that Judas is going to betray him. And he knows what the outcome of that is going to be for himself and for Judas. He knows that this is going to happen a year before that, when they were walking through the streets performing miracles. He knew that this was going to happen at the moment that he turned to Judas, in whatever setting it was, and said, "Follow me." When he called Judas to be one of his disciples, and then called him to be one of his 12, like the inner circle, he knew that he would betray him. In fact, I don't think it's Matthew, but one of the other Gospels, early on, there's this calling of 12, and he says, I have called all 12 of you, although one of you is a son of the devil. There's this idea of the betrayal that's going to take place, that there's something wrong in his heart, that he's not truly committed to Christ. And we can actually see that in the phrase, in the words that are used. Our words are important, and our words can tell us a lot about what we actually think of things and how we actually value things. The titles that we have, the sense of reverence that we have towards certain people and positions and things and stuff. Notice the words that are used. All of the disciples, Jesus says, "One of you is going to betray me." And one by one, they say, "Surely not I, Lord. Surely not I, Lord. Surely not I, Lord." Except for Judas. Judas doesn't call Christ Lord. He says, "Surely not I, Rabbi, teacher." There's something there. Judas does not see Jesus as Lord. He doesn't see him in that way. He does not recognize Christ for who Christ truly is. He doesn't have that reverence for him. He doesn't have that sense of respect for him. Because if he did, there's no way he would have betrayed him in the way that he did. There's some other signs that we can see. One of the roles that Judas had among the 12 was to take care of the finances. And through the scriptures, there's pointing that he benefited in a personal way from the finances. Could you imagine that? Like the boldness, the audacity to walk with this man who you see know the thoughts of others, who performs miracles, who teaches the greatest lessons on morality that have ever been taught, and to steal from him, to benefit from him for your own selfish gain. Judas's motive for following Jesus is drastically different than that of the other disciples. The other disciples who love Jesus, recognize him as Lord, and follow him because he is God, and he has asked them to follow him. Judas is much different than that. Judas is almost this example of the prosperity gospel in its ancient term. He is following Jesus because it is to his benefit. Maybe it's to his benefit in a political way. Maybe it's clearly to his benefit in a monetary way. Maybe it's benefit that he's saying that, if something comes out of this, then he could end up in a high-ranking position where he could have authority. And as Jesus' teachings, and he's talking more and more about him being sacrificed, that he's going to die, that this is going to take place, he's realizing that, maybe this isn't, the horse that I want to hitch my wagon to, as it were. And so Jesus, at this interaction with the woman who was putting the anointing, he says, she's preparing me for burial. That seems to have done something to Judas, that it moves him. He's like, all right, I'm going to go and see, I don't want to be a part of this anymore. So how much money can I get from betraying him once again so I can get my own gain, and then I'll move on to whatever else. It doesn't work out for him. He realizes his guilt after everything that's about to take place in the coming chapters, and he throws the money back. He's like, I don't want any part in this. It's really too late at that point. And then he kills himself. And so the question comes, if you are a follower of Christ, why? Why are you a follower of Christ? Are you a follower of Christ because you see him as Lord, that he's worthy to be followed, that glorifying God and living for God and following his ways is how we are meant to be? Or is it something else? You've heard me probably many times before talk about this idea of the prosperity gospel, or this idea of, come to Jesus so that you can be healthy and happy and rich. And it's foolishness. The amount of people who think that they are right in the sight of God, who think that they are in the fold, that think that they are Christians, but they've been manipulated and they've been tricked into this false gospel, this other version of following Christ for different motives. It's clear through Jesus' teaching. He cares about your heart. He cares about your heart being aligned with him and his ways, and that you're following him for the right motives. He's not interested in people who are following him that they might be able to get a political vote, or they might get monetary value, or they might get some rank or authority or position or reverence tied to it. He's not interested in that. He wants you to follow him because you see him as Lord, worthy of that you understand that it's through him and him alone that you can find freedom, you can find salvation, you can find grace and mercy and forgiveness. It's through him and him alone. And you might think to yourself, well, I've had experience, like I've learned things from God, and I've had experiences with God, and I've had this and that and the other thing, and so obviously I'm right before God. Judas walked for 2 to 3 years with Jesus, depending on when he was called. Jesus taught him things. Jesus challenged him. He watched Jesus perform miracles. He himself actually, Jesus is there a couple chapters before this, right? And he says to the 12, I give you all authority to heal and cast out demons. And then they went and they did. They healed people and they cast out demons and they taught the things that Jesus was teaching. Judas was included in that. But his heart was not right. He wasn't genuine with God. He had all these experiences, and it's crazy to me. Like it's really hard to understand and to grasp why, oh why, would Jesus call this man knowing that he would never actually have that level of allegiance, and that he loved him. Jesus continued to love him even in that moment. He loved him and allowed him. We have to watch our hearts. We have to watch and make sure that we are truly following God, and we're following him because he is worthy and because we love him, and not because we want to get something out of it. Not because we want to get some monetary or reverence or authority or anything else. That's dangerous. Like, you could go a little bit before this event and look at the 12, and without us having that knowledge of what is going to take place, we would look at them and think these guys are solid, they are after Christ, they're right before God. And that's terrifying, because there he is. And he wasn't right with God. His heart wasn't right with God. He wasn't there for those motives. And so the application is just, my goodness, be careful. Watch your heart. Why are you following God? Are you actually following God? Is there conditions on you following God? Judas, when he realizes that, it's not going to give him rank, it's not going to give him long-term financial gain, it's not going to put him in some sort of position, when he realized, okay, Jesus is actually serious about him dying, and it's coming soon, he got out. Is there conditions on you following Christ? Is there conditions on you following God? God, I'm going to follow you, but if you ask this of me, then I'm out. Then you're not following him. God, I'm going to follow you, but if you want me to do this or go there or say this or do this or make this sacrifice, then I'm out. Then he's not Lord of your life. If he's Lord of your life, then he has full authority. And you're willing to say, Lord, I love you, and I will submit to whatever you want of me. Whatever you want of me. We need to analyze our hearts. We need to look at our lives. We need to look at how we are and what we're after, and ask ourselves, why am I following Christ? What is the motive behind that? And then in our presentation of the gospel, we have to make sure that we are not putting this call out there of come follow God that you might be rich. Come follow God that you might be healthy. Come follow God that you might find a community. Come follow God for anything else. It's come follow God because He is worthy. He is worthy to be glorified to be glorified by you. And it is through Him and Him alone that you might find grace, mercy, and forgiveness and redemption. You can't find those from anywhere else. You have sin and it needs to be addressed. And if we don't address that, if we don't look and we just say, maybe Jesus was just a good teacher. We look at Jesus and we say, yes, Rabbi. Is it me, Rabbi? Hey, Rabbi. Like even when Judas comes and identifies him, that's what he says. He's like, hey, Rabbi. Are we willing to call Jesus Lord? And does our lifestyle reflect the lordship that He truly holds? I hope it does. I really hope it does. May we honor God in all that we do. I hope that's an encouragement to you. I hope that you do have God, that Jesus is the Lord of your life. If He's not, take steps to make Him Lord of your life. Have a great week. Honor God in all that you do.